Today we're diving into a critical issue facing the UK property market right now, one that could have massive implications for the future of housing and rental homes across the country. We're talking about the latest calls from the British Property Federation for the reintroduction of stamp duty land tax SDLT relief for high-density housing. If you're a homeowner, investor, or anyone interested in the housing sector, this one is for you. But before we get into this update, if you've not already, please subscribe to our channel and ring the notification bell for upcoming updates. Let's break it down. So, what exactly is happening here? Recently, the British Property Federation BPF, which represents over 400 property-related organisations, made a bold call to the government. They're asking for the reintroduction of a tax relief known as the Multiple Dwellings Relief MDR for high-density housing project. Now, you might be wondering, why is this so important? Let's rewind a little bit. The MDR was abolished last year, and according to the BPF, this relief was one of the key drivers of growth in the build-to-rent sector, which has been a huge part of the UK housing landscape over the past decade. For those of you unfamiliar with MDR, it was a tax relief that helped developers and investors reduce the amount of stamp duty they had to pay when purchasing large-scale residential buildings, particularly for properties with multiple units. The BPF argues that the abolition of MDR has had a significant negative impact on the delivery of new rental homes in the private rental sector PRs. In fact, according to real estate firm Savills, the number of new PRs homes being delivered is set to drop by a staggering 77% between 2022 and 2025. Yes, you heard that right, 77%. That's a huge hit to the market, and the BPF is saying that reinstating MDR could help reverse this alarming trend. But it's not just about MDR. The British Property Federation also put forward some additional recommendations to help stimulate the market and get more homes built, particularly in the high-density housing space. One of the key suggestions is to completely exempt SDLT in areas with very low land value, such as brownfield sites and regeneration areas. These are the places where the government is focusing much of its efforts to revitalise communities and create new homes. So the idea is that by removing SDLT in these areas, it would incentivise developers to build even more housing. Now you might be thinking, wait, the government already made a decision to scrap MDR, so why should they bring it back? Well, the government did review the MDR as part of their tax relief evaluation programme, and they concluded that there was no strong evidence showing that MDR was having a significant impact on the overall housing supply or on PRS supply. In other words, they didn't think MDR was doing enough to justify its existence. But here's the problem. The British Property Federation believes that the government missed the bigger picture. They argue that scrapping MDR has already had a negative effect on investor confidence, and that by not reinstating this relief, the government is further discouraging investment in new rental properties. And in a housing market already grappling with high demand and low supply, the BPF says this is a step in the wrong direction. So, what would reinstating MDR mean for the market? Well, according to the BPF, it would help reduce the financial burden on developers, which in turn would encourage them to build more high-density housing units. This would be a key step toward addressing the ongoing housing crisis and helping to meet the government's ambitious target of building 1.5 million new homes by the end of this parliament. But the BPF isn't stopping there. They've also called for some other significant changes to help boost housing delivery. One of the most pressing recommendations is to stabilise tax and regulation in the sector. The BPF points out that the mere suggestion of new taxes or levies can scare away potential investors, which in turn hampers the government's goal of increasing housing supply. They want to see a clear, predictable tax environment that encourages investment, rather than one that makes developers hesitant to commit. Another key recommendation from the BPF is the appointment of 3 000 additional planners in local authorities. The thinking here is that the planning process has become increasingly slow and bureaucratic, which is holding up new developments. By bringing in more planners, the BPF believes that the government could speed up the approval process and get more projects off the ground. There's also a call for simplifying guidance at the building safety regulator, particularly around the recruitment of technical experts in building and fire safety. As we've seen in the wake of tragedies like Grenfell, safety is a top priority, and the BPF wants to make sure that the regulatory system is as efficient and effective as possible to avoid further delays. But there's another area that's been flagged as a key issue: empty properties. The BPF has recommended the removal of both council tax and business rates on newly developed or refurbished properties that are empty. The rationale behind this is that these taxes put a huge upfront cost burden on developers, which can make projects less viable. By removing these charges, the BPF argues that developers would be incentivized to finish projects more quickly, leading to faster build-out rates and more homes coming to market. So, why is all of this important? Well, if you've been paying attention to the UK property market over the past few years, you'll know that we're in the midst of a housing crisis. There's not enough supply to meet the growing demand, and prices continue to rise in many areas, putting home ownership out of reach for many people. For renters, this is a huge issue as well, as the supply of rental homes is shrinking and rents are continuing to rise. The BPF's recommendations are an attempt to address some of these issues and kickstart the development of more homes, especially rental properties. But there's a catch. Not everyone agrees with the BPF's approach. The government, for instance, seems to believe that scrapping MDR was the right decision based on their evaluation. They argue that tax relief wasn't making a significant enough impact on housing supply. The challenge for the BPF is to convince the government that reintroducing MDR would, in fact, stimulate the delivery of new rental homes, and that doing so would ultimately help to ease the pressure on the housing market. Melanie Leach, the chief executive of the British Property Federation, has urged the government to carefully consider the impact of the decisions it makes in the upcoming budget. She warns against making quick fixes that could further erode investor confidence. As she points out, the consequences of scrapping MDR have already been felt in the market, and any further actions that discourage investment could make the situation worse. So, where does that leave us? It's clear that the UK housing market is at a critical juncture. The government's decisions in the coming months could have long-lasting effects on housing supply, affordability, and rental availability. The BPF's proposal to bring back MDR is just one piece of the puzzle, but if implemented, it could have a significant impact on the delivery of high-density homes and, ultimately, the stability of the rental market. As always, let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you agree with the BPF's recommendations? Do you think reinstating MDR could help ease the housing crisis, or do you think there's another solution out there? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more updates on the UK property market. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.